Tomorrow is the 137th anniversary of the birthday of Agustin Barrios. I'd like to read about a concert in Brazil. It's on page 642 to 644 in my book, Annotations for the History of the Classical Guitar in Argentina, 1822 to 2000. It's $300, shipping included worldwide. It says this concert review is from the magazine O Vilão, issue number 10 of November, December 1929, published in Rio de Janeiro. The director was B. Dantas de Souza Pombo, and he may have been who wrote the concert reviews that follow. There is no signature for them. As Domingo Prat says, B. Dantas de Souza Pombo was a student of the Argentine guitarist Juan A. Rodriguez, Portuguese translation by myself, Randy Osborne. A recital by Agustin Barrios. On the 28th of the previous month, being November, Agustin Barrios reappeared before our public in the Theater Municipal, giving us another recital. Since 1917, we couldn't hear him, having therefore an interval of 12 years. In that space of time, however, the Paraguayan artist suffered no modification. Barrios is unquestionably the most discussed lover of the guitar in South America, in all of the countries where he has played, since you get various opinions, creating a pleiad of proselytes that admire him and elevate to the heights, replacing him on an elevated pedestal, coming to affirm him to be the best contemporary guitarist. From there, maybe the reaction provoked by him is much bigger than the action. So even in our groups where the personality of Barrios is discussed, there is no middle ground, or better said, a fair term, not being able to form a sure judgment about his competence according to the passionate opinions. From those, however, highlights and evidence, Barrios always gets the majority of the lovers of the guitar excited, perhaps by their rather democratic temperament. Moreover, his repertoire is perfectly accessible to the less cultured spirits. In the case of the pure melodies, not the lacking the sincerity of the more complicated harmonization. To highlight and stand out, especially because Barrios appears to us not to be concerned to please the public in mass, as to which he identifies and which he really pleases. If it were only art, the Paraguayan artist wouldn't derive restrictions. Unfortunately, it isn't only that. Two demands are too severe, and from there we see Barrios sustaining the struggle for many years. It begins by the mode of stringing the guitar. He is the only one to play steel strings on the first three strings of his instrument: Segovia, Josefina Robledo, Juan Rodriguez, Miguel Llobet, Emilio Pujol, and Regino Sainz de la Maza, considered the best guitarists of the world, all use gut strings. It doesn't detract from the timbre of the instrument, in reality a musical heresy. This question, and the primary one when discussing the personality of the Paraguayan artist. He meanwhile sustains his point of view against all the masters of the instrument and doesn't compromise. To break the shrillness of the steel strings, presented to us this time an innovation of placing rubber dampers over them down by the bridge. However, breaking that shrillness, making this sound pleasing, also diminishing this intensity, making the spectators' distances imperceptible, as you would verify in this concert. Right there in the Municipal Theater, it hasn't been a long time since Sainz de la Maza, playing on gut strings, had twice the sonority obtained by Barrios. Therefore, it seems to us out of doubt that the supporters of the steel strings are in error. They judge them as the best sonority. Really, the less cautious have that impression when they listen. From up close to the guitar strung with steel, but putting themselves in the distance, they notice the error. Its use before that can only be justified by the greater ease of performance for those not following the classical school. Too difficult, but always productive. It seems to us that the intolerance of Barrios in this question About this he has been precisely struggling, studying by himself with the assistance of some master's experience. Not having made naturally a solid basis, he has to eternally struggle at the difficulties conquered by the masters of the instrument, such as his small sonority and the detraction of harmonization of the chords by pieces that breathe. Barrios simplifies everything for being able to take the forces of accessible effects. It turns out he presents an imperfect performance and a formidable technique, sometimes even exciting. Still, the techniques repair what he uses and abuses of effects that outrage the reputed artistic masters, such as, for example, the repeated vibrato, prolonged, giving a monotone to the guitar out of character to compare its sorrowful cittern. Moreover, Barrios still seeks to have effect of antiquated hits such as a bugle and drum. He strikes over the bridge of the instrument of whom the late patriarch of the guitar, Canhoto, excited the spectators in the music houses. Targa, the immortal innovator of the guitar, composing a formidable Jota Aragonesa, not being able to plagiarize a variation with such effects because it is of a musical characteristic that was forced to enrich an elevated harmony, so even the 26 genius variations, those are the most banal. Today it would be ridiculous for a Segovia, a Robledo, a Rodriguez to present themselves before a cultured public playing a march such as the bugle, to repeatedly and uninterruptedly having the drums snore annoyingly. Barrios, however, despises all those objections and prefers to continue his artistic career. Conceived as such, he is persistent. We respect his point of view. He really has qualities among this that is to be convinced in his artistic process. However, it is only that which he possesses. Barrios is also sentimental and knows in regard to this communicative soul how to stamp an essential quality of an artist, that he is without any favors. And we go ahead. Barrios is also a creator. His compositions demonstrate, some of them even can be presented as masterpieces of art. For example, Madrigal, published in the early 1920s, performed in the first part of his program. It is a piece of music filled of sentiment, of rich harmonization and varying effect. The other compositions of his, not less than 8 of them, of the 14 numbers which constitute his program, although pleasant, analyzed in their essence, they leave a lot to desire by the poor harmonization, by the lack of structure, or by constructing them as imitations of the others. Among these is his La Catedral, together with chords by Bach, melodies of Schubert, and common canzonettas. Souvenir de un rêve, un sueño en la floresta also isn't a melody modeled, but in the least it is very similar to Meditación by Carlos Garcia Tolsa. In order as a composer for Barrios to present to us some qualities, some of the most appreciable, however, it's always resentful for the lack of a solid base. The numbers of his compositions were impeccably performed, apart from the restrictions of this assessment. When, however, Barrios performs Bach, Mozart, and Chopin, he stumbles too often. In the second part, he performed the Minuetto by Beethoven and the Preludio by Bach, alias the simplest and shortest by far of the program. Sevilla by Albéniz was performed in a regular manner. That is our opinion about the Paraguayan artist. Although in his program he announces consecrated by the critics as the best contemporary guitarist, we did not judge him as such. He, in our view, is far from approaching the 3 great guitarists who have visited us, Robledo, Sainz de la Maza, and Rodriguez. And whosoever shall say to the contrary does so by their own personal sympathy. This is the program which the Paraguayan concert guitarist Agustin Barrios presented to the public on the evening of Thursday, November 28, 1929, in the Teatro Municipal of this theater, Rio de Janeiro. First set, Serenata Morisca by Barrios, A Catedral, Barrios, Andante Religioso, Allegro, Madrigal by Barrios, Capriccio Español by Barrios. Set number 2, Prelude by Bach, Lore by Bach, Menuetto by Beethoven, Tema Variato, Mozart, Sora, some magic flute variations, Nocturno, Opus number 9, number 2 by Chopin. Sevilla by Albani starts off the third set, Souvenir d'un Rêve, Tremolo piece by Barrios. This took up 2 sides of a 78 RPM record that I owned. Harmonias de America, Barrios. I talked about how that piece was the B-side of La Catedral, and for 10 months La Catedral was in the can and not available to the public because all the other recordings were put on 10-inch discs. The 12-inch disc that had La Catedral and Harmonias de America was then released. Alvarada Histórica Paraguay by Barrios. This concert review is from O Vilão, issue number 10, November, December 1929. So we have a second concert of Maestro Agustin Barrios. We have already placed in another part of this magazine the impressions of the first concert by Barrios. Due to the fact that this issue covers 2 months, November and December, we went timely to his second concert. We still publish its result. The artist said how he felt, and it was visible. He was unwell, fearing he couldn't ever successfully complete his program. Even so, he surprised us. Barrios was brilliant that evening, not only in his performance, in which there were nothing left to desire, as well in the repertoire that he chose. In some pieces, such as Leyenda by Albanese and Canzonetta by Mendelssohn, it was mastery impeccable. It is a shame that our people are disinterested in some guitar concerts. They kill the stimulus of the artists who, such as Barrios, Rodriguez, Sainz de la Maza, and others, that make enormous sacrifices to bring their marvelous art to all corners, is well a reward that at least is a relative comfort for one of them. The program of the second concert of Agustin Barrios. He starts off with La Samaritana, Menuetto in C major, B major, Waltz number 3, Allegro Brillante. Set number 2, Schumann's Traumerei. I have a mint version of that. Mendelssohn, Mazurka, Mendelssohn, Canzonetta, Torina's Fandanguillo, Albani's Leyenda, Asturias Leyenda, Arcus Gran Fantasia in La major, A major. Set number 3, Barrios, O Coro da Saudade, Página de Album, Contemplação, Tremolo piece. I used to play that. I had it memorized 3 times in the last 40 years. Jota Aragonesa. The O Vilão magazines came from the collection of Ronoel Simoes, who passed away in, I think, October of 2010. Ivan Peixoto, guitarist in Brazil, he is the one who knew Ronoel face to face, and due to his kindness, I have the different programs and interviews of different artists in my book, Annotations for the History of the Classical Guitar in Argentina, 1822 to 2000. You can see this at the bottom of the homepage, findfretted.com. You can click on it, buy it through PayPal. Thank you. Tomorrow is the real Cinco de Mayo, the birth of Agustin Barrios.